first of all, Lizzo, yes, that is absolutely the anthem for today. Good evening. I am Monica McNutt, and welcome to MSG Sports International Women's Day virtual conversation presented by Chase. We are thrilled that you could join us. Happy International Women's Day to all my ladies out there. We're going to continue to definitely celebrate this day and Women's History Month in March on this particular day. We've got a fantastic panel planned for you guys. I can't wait to get into it. So let's dive right in. Joining us today, we've got President, Team Marketing and Business Operations and Chief Innovation Officer at the NBA, Amy Brooks. We also, hey Amy, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, everyone. Good to be here.
So excited. All right, so it doesn't stop there. Joining Amy, we also have Hockey Hall of Famer and four-time Olympic gold medalist and operations consultant for Professional Women's Hockey Player Association, Jana Hefford. Jana, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Super excited to jump in this conversation. And rounding out our dynamic trio, we have the Managing Director of Evolution Media Capital under CAA, which is Creative Arts Agency, big time agency. Caroline Rebello is joining us, and she's done big time sports deals. We can't wait to pick her brain as well. Caroline, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, ladies, you all, first of all, are all power players, but I do want to start at the very basis of this, I think, in the intersection of MSG hosting this event, and that is all of our collective sports backgrounds. So before we jump into your professional careers, can you just share a little bit of your sports background? Obviously, Jana, we know that you went on to be fantastic in your sport, but Amy, Jana, and Caroline, let's just hear a little bit about your sports background. Amy, you first.
Yeah, please let me go before Jana. That's my request here. I am always loved playing sports. I played basketball at Stanford, where I was a walk-on, 1.8 points per game, but it was probably the most transformative experience of my career. I was lucky to do it.
I guess you're right, Amy. Let's go Caroline and then Jana. Caroline, your sports background.
I too have a love of sports. I was a gymnast first, and then I became a pole vaulter, and I pole vaulted at the University of Pennsylvania, home of the Penn Relays.
Fantastic. And Jana.
Well, obviously, I played hockey. I grew up in a hockey-loving family and started playing at a pretty young age, and really just grew up loving it and having a passion for the game that really felt like I was sort of born with it. I don't remember the moment I started to like it, but and was fortunate enough to be able to compete for 17 years with the national team here in Canada, and fortunate now to continue to stay in the game and be a part of this powerful movement that's the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association.
We are so excited about all the things on the brink with that league and the big time eyeballs. So we're definitely going to talk a little bit about this, but I want to go to Amy first. Briefly, can you describe how that love of sports kind of propelled you into your current career path?
Yeah, I didn't work in sports until I was 30 years old. And so having gone and worked in technology and other things, I always thought I wanted to go back into sports, but I realized, and for those of you who hire people in sports, I raised my hand to do sports marketing, and they said, how are you different? And I'm like, I really love sports. And that's not a really good answer these days to work in sports. So I went back and tried to distinguish myself through analytics at the time. And I feel really fortunate having done that, because obviously that's been a big area of explosion on both the sports side as well as the business side. And I was lucky enough, to meet someone who worked at the NBA who hired me and moved across the country 16 years ago from California. And here I am. I wasn't at home, but I'm at home today.
I love that, Amy. I think even though it wasn't a direct correlation, the openness and willingness to try and differentiate yourself is such a major key. I hope the young ladies really grasp that as we're listening. Caroline, what about you?
I'm similar to Amy. I really loved sports, and no matter what, you can always watch sports, so you're always going to be able to engage with it. But I started my career in banking, covering consumer companies, and then I went on to investing, and I just happened upon an investment that ended up being a sports team. And so that's how I started my career. And then I met a number of people and was able to transition eventually to work at CAA.
Love that. Now, Jana, for you, it seems like it's a little bit more of a formulaic. You obviously were passionate and very successful, and now your leadership and expertise is tapped into on the leadership side, I guess.
Yeah, it was hard to imagine not playing, as a current athlete and didn't really know where my career path would go, but I knew that I wanted to stay in the game in some capacity. So I was pretty open-minded and tried to beef up my resume on the business side a little bit. I went back and did some continuing education studies and did that while I completed my playing career. And then I had the opportunity to get involved with the Canadian Women's Hockey League when I retired. And it really, for me, is all stemmed from trying to make the game better, leave the game better, support the current players. And really deep down, that comes from my passion. But I'm fortunate to be able to stay in the game and work with the best players in the world and try to elevate the sport.
Now, you guys all, even Jana just talked about going back to beef up her business side. Amy and Caroline, you approached it from a business mindset first, and you've all found your way back into sports. When you look at it, were there any role models for you, whether they were athletes or business people, as you guys were beginning your careers? Amy.
Well, the person who hired me at the NBA was a woman, Heidi Uberoth, who used to oversee our global media and marketing partnership business. And so for me, it was great to see someone already in that role who was a woman. And we can talk about this more. I often think, would I have gone into the sports side of basketball? Because I didn't see anyone back then. No, there were no female general managers or assistant general managers or anyone in basketball operations on the NBA side. And so I sometimes wonder, like, would I have taken a different career path if there were more women on the basketball side of things back then?
That's a very interesting question. Caroline, I know you are heading up sort of a whole new division that was created in 2010, I believe, with CAA. When did you see someone, or were you the first person to kind of foray into this as a woman?
I actually joined with another woman that's based in our LA office that covers media and entertainment companies. So very fortunate that CAA already had a number of women there. And we have incredible basketball agents who are women and brand managers and things like that. So very fortunate. But I actually looked up to somebody who used to work at MSG and for the Knicks, who I had met. And I asked another woman from ESPN. So I really wanted to have a career like they did. They were, 10, 12 years older than me. And so very fortunate to have met them very early on in my career.
Love that. Now, Jana, you obviously were a role model in so many ways as an elite athlete. But I know, at least as I've covered the WNBA, and I'm curious if the National Women's Hockey League has a similar experience. It's kind of like, oh, that's cute, but it's over here. And so as this thing has become far more mainstream and media is giving it the attention that it deserves, just beginning to, I should say. What was your fight kind of like?
Well, I don't think I saw many women in professional hockey in terms of the NHL and what we would look to as professional hockey, but I did have some strong female role models within Hockey Canada and obviously spent a long time there. We had a woman by the name of Melody Davidson, who was our GM and head scout for a big chunk of my career. So seeing a woman lead the way there, Hockey Canada was incredibly supportive of the women's program. And then the other thing I had was teammates that were a little bit older than me that I looked up to that then transitioned into the business side. And, people like Cassie Campbell, who's, an icon here in Canada on Hockey Night in Canada in the media side. And so I had a few teammates like that, Cami Granado, who I played against, but a big instrumental figure in the US. And they were able to branch out of being athletes and into influential figures in the sport. And so definitely looked up to some of them and how they were able to transition out of sport.
Guys, and I know we've got so many great questions, but I'm curious, and I love the question that you posed, Amy, about being able to see her so that you could be her, right? If you had to take away one thing in terms of women encouraging one another, what would it be, Amy?
Just support. You mean your question, just like supporting women and the importance of that? I mean, I think it is important. That's why I don't always consider myself a role model, but I know I'm in a position to be a role model because people see, oh, wait, this is a woman who has that position. And so however we can I think a lot of times people are hesitant to connect with others and ask about how their job is. I think that's so important. It's something I would encourage, just because you don't always know the type of range of roles that are out there. And it's so important to have those conversations and really learn what people do, because there's a lot of different ways people go. And that's our whole goal in this, right? It's, I have 2 daughters, 9 and 11. I want them growing up saying, I can do whatever I want to do. I can go that way. No one says, I don't see a woman in that position, therefore I can't go that way. So I think that's our whole goal here, is each generation feels a lot more open to do whatever they want.
I love that. I love that. Now, Caroline, for you, we mentioned this group that you manage, 11 years, and the many, it sounds like, powerful women that are at CAA. But in terms of working in talent and sports and big time contracts, when it came to the negotiating table, sometimes there's this notion about women as negotiators. What makes you a strong and powerful negotiator?
Being prepared, I think, is the best part of it. We're fortunate that we can prepare before negotiations, but for me, the most important thing is that everybody walks away being happy, having something that they got that they needed, because that's what builds strong partnerships. It's like any relationship where there's a give and a take, and you have to make sure that it works for everyone. And so, that's how I approach those types of negotiations. And we've been really fortunate to broker lots of great deals, and long partnerships that work.
Obviously, your track record speaks for itself, Caroline, but I think that's so interesting because I remember, it wasn't Lean In, but one of the many popular women empowerment books. And one of the tips was, don't try to negotiate like a man, negotiate like a woman, because what you bring to the table belongs. Have you found that to be the case?
I have. We always joke that if women ran the world, we'd be fine. But, again, it goes with being yourself. I'm not a man. I'm not going to negotiate like a man. I'm going to be me. And, I've always been fair. I've always been honest. And, I come prepared with, stating my case and making sure that a partnership is going to last a long time. And that means that whether it's both sides make money or both sides get great exposure, that everybody's getting and achieving the goals that they need to achieve.
I love that. I love that. Now, Jana, last week we had history at the Garden. We had the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association team up to host the first ever professional women's hockey game on site at MSG. What does this mean to you, and how do you think that it can shape the future of women's hockey to be on that big stage?
Well, it was so exciting. And, I can't even imagine our players who got to be there and compete on the ice. I joked before that I would have come out of retirement to be able to skate in that game. And that didn't happen. But, for anybody that watched, they saw Billie Jean King open the game up. And she said to the women, look at this iconic ceiling because you guys are busting through it right now. And it was so powerful. I'm in Canada, obviously. I was stuck here due to border restrictions, but I was watching on television and, I had chills just listening to her speak and seeing our players' faces and the emotion on their faces, understanding how important that moment was for so many young girls around the world, whether they were hockey players or not. It was, again, breaking a barrier for, as Amy talked about, I have 2 daughters and I want them to see women on TV playing hockey, playing tennis, playing soccer, playing basketball. It doesn't matter. But when they see that, they know that there's a possibility that could be them if that's something they chose. So it was amazing. And the New York Rangers were the first NHL team to really step up this year and champion this with the PWHPA. And I know Rick Nadeau was on the call earlier, but he has been such a champion for us. And for the PWHPA to have NHL teams that share our vision of what professional women's hockey should look like. Our sport has never been supported in a way to actually allow the game to grow and to develop. We all know that takes investment, and we look at the WNBA and it doesn't happen overnight. But when you start to see some of the success that we've seen, we know our sport is primed and ready for that. But we need the investment in it to get it going. So the New York Rangers were incredible. And when you get to see women's hockey on a platform like that, in an arena like that, on a national broadcast, everybody that watched the game, they want to watch it again. So it was so important, and really our players just couldn't have imagined something bigger and better than what they got to achieve last weekend.
It was certainly super cool. I know my good friend Michelle Gingras was ringside, and she was radiant afterwards. She was super excited going in, but even afterward, she was incredibly proud to be a part of such an incredible event. I want to go back to you, Amy. You are the first person in the NBA to hold your current title. What excites you about driving the innovation of the league?
Thank you, Monica. Yeah, since 2017, I've been Chief Innovation Officer, and this is a title that Adam Silver was very passionate about, just because innovation is such a core value of what we do. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's never a dull moment, I'll put it that way. But it's, whether you're talking about expanding this game globally, whether you're talking about expanding into new demographics, whether that be women, whether that be youth, we're always talking about something new and different. Technology, this is a call about women in sports, but it's like all of us have to embrace technology in the future of that. If you just go, our latest story of the day is NBA Top Shot. If you go to NBATopShot.com, there is this notion, and this came out of an innovation campaign a couple of years ago, where we had a league and team innovation campaign of what business should the NBA go into, and several people had the idea of blockchain, and specifically blockchain collectibles. So we partnered with a company who had done crypto kitties, created a format where people can buy and trade NBA highlights, digitized, and own them. And just go Google it after we're done, and you'll see it's this big, large, budding business that has all sorts of implications, not just for sports and entertainment, but for many, many other things. So that type of thing just energizes me. Obviously, all of us have spent, especially those of us in sports, a lot of the last year talking about COVID, overcoming COVID, the number of models I have, on my computer of different formats of structuring the NBA season, right? We've had to navigate all of those things, but it's really exciting to think about the future of media, the future of technology, the future of our global sports game. And Jana, to the point about hockey, like it's, even as a basketball person, it's so exciting to see women's hockey in such an amazing new format in this country. So I get really excited about that kind of stuff.
As you should. We all do. Now, it's interesting because I feel like there's a common theme here between the three of you, besides you just being bomb boss women. Amy's in it, holding a title that is new. She's the first person to hold this title. Caroline, you developed this whole new wing for CAA that's been very successful. Jana, you are a part of the National Women's Hockey League, growing to heights that we have not yet seen. Caroline, I want to spin it to you. When you're embarking on something new, I guess, what are best practices? Like, how do you sell? How do you pitch that? Because you guys are all kind of entering into new frontiers.
It's all about showing what the future is like. And, sports, people want to innovate, and media, we've seen more innovation in the last 12 months than we've seen ever with the pandemic, and being able to connect virtually and be able to watch anything and everything on demand with the several streaming services. So for us, it's about seeing and helping innovate an industry, and really connecting consumers to the various sports brands that we have, whether it's hockey or basketball or football or baseball, golf, our Olympic sports and Olympic athletes. So anything that we can do to help innovate and help people reach their fans, and have fans be able to reach those teams and those role models, is something that we're interested in. And that's really what we're pitching.
Oh, sorry guys, 2020 technology things. That was a tremendous answer. So I guess my question though to you guys is, as we're talking on International Women's Day, and we're super empowered, Caroline, but I feel like new is not always met with welcome arms and ears. So what's that part like? I always say that you have to have a healthy relationship with no. Just because somebody else can't see the vision doesn't mean that it's not something worth pursuing. But how have you kind of dealt with pushback, things being tabled maybe in your industry?
You have to find somebody willing to test, and there's always someone. You just have to find them. And it's funny you speak about, the future versus now. nothing will replace going to a live game. I think we can all agree on that. And so, part of our business is about everything else but the live game. How do we make it exciting to engage and watch a game or experience a game? And it's what the NBA has done so well, is to really surround the entire experience, whether you've got a junior league that you're playing in, or you've got, you're going to MSG for a Knicks game. I mean, it's incredible. Or you're watching it on TV.
Right. There's so much to think about. Like it's crazy that we've been in the pandemic for a year, but moving forward, it does kind of get your wheels turning about what does the future look like. But you're right, nothing replaces being in person, excuse me. All right, Jana, I want to go to you. You mentioned the partnership with the NHL and professional hockey, and this word of ally has been in the conversation, I should say, over this past year. How important has allyship and genuine support been from men?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of this. We believe the NHL and NHL clubs play a role in the future of the women's game because they have the experience, they have the infrastructure, they have the things in place that can help build that foundation. I think having some of these men in the game, be it athletes, be it executives that believe in the mission and the vision is really key. We've had recently a lot of support from NHL players that are now supporting the women. And I think as the generation has changed, some of these younger athletes now, they grew up with sisters that played hockey or friends that played hockey. It's not, the unusual. When I grew up, I was the one girl that played hockey in my town kind of thing. And that's just not the way it is anymore. So I think when we look at the next generation of fans in sport, they expect different things from us. They expect inclusion. They expect, I think, us to be led by our values and what we believe in. And so I think, having everyone on board and sharing in the vision is really key. And we've had some amazing men in the game that have said, they believe in the future for these women and they see the value in them and they see the value to both the women, but they also see the value in bringing more women into the men's game, be it in executive suites, be it in PR, in media, in scouting. So I think that allyship is incredibly important.
What would all of you guys say, and Amy, we'll start with you, because sometimes I know I have seen it, particularly I'm from the Washington, D.C. area, when the Washington football team this year hired a friend of mine, Julie Donaldson, to run all of their media. She was the first woman to have that position. And you heard this idea of token, right? What would you guys say, Amy, to folks that toss out that notion when they see women getting these opportunities?
Well, you have to start with the fact that diversity drives better business results, and there's data to back that up. So, but you've got to start somewhere. And whenever you're quote unquote fixing a certain area to make it more diverse, you have to start with one person and then you add another and then you add another and then you add another. For us, we've had 6 female referees. We have 11 women climbing the path towards becoming a general manager in the NBA, right? You have to start with one person as the leader there. I thought Jana's point was the right one too about allyship amongst leagues. You want to know one of our biggest success stories during the pandemic? Our hottest selling item, the orange WNBA hoodie, yes. Like it blew off the shelves, right? Like, obviously it's cool and slick. Didn't hurt that Kobe wore it. Didn't hurt that other NBA stars wore it. Other people outside of sports wore it. It doesn't hurt that we have teams, WNBA teams, sitting alongside NBA teams. If you go to Minnesota and you go to their practice facility, the Timberwolves practice facility court is exactly the same in locker room, right next to it, the Minnesota Lynx court. And that just shows where you're going. And when young girls get into that environment, and they see a lot of women in certain positions and they see that as equal, it's different, right? And it's different how some of us grew up too.
I love that. The teams being next to one another. I mean, that's the way it should be. It's basketball and we're talking about elite athletes on both sides. Caroline, I don't know if you've ever heard the word token thrown around personally, or I'm sure you've read about it in regards to other women. How have you responded?
The answer is no. Okay. It's an incredibly hard business to break into. I would say that the women work a lot harder to break into it, to be honest. So, I I would challenge somebody who says that that's a token hire, because what you're going to find is that that woman is equally qualified or more qualified in some respects for that job. And, it's about, as Amy said, you got to get everybody around the table. All different types of people make for a better product, whatever that product is that you're doing or that service, and having all those different perspectives. At CAA, we always want to hire people that aren't like us, whether they came from a different field or they came from a different background or they grew up differently. Those are all things that are really important to us, is the diversity. We always laugh and say, at CAA, you'll walk around and you'll see somebody who's purple and you won't think anything of it, because that's, for us, the weird fits.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Ladies, if you're listening, you heard what Caroline said. Oftentimes women are even more qualified because we're really working to hit those points that are suggested in terms of the experience needed for the job. So don't ever sell yourself short. You certainly belong in those rooms. Jaina, I want to ask you about staying power for the league. What will it take for this league to be celebrating, what do we want to celebrate? 25 years of success in national women's professional hockey.
I mean, I think it takes that initial investment that I talked about. And, Amy could probably speak to that, but what the NBA had to do to really help build a foundation and be patient with that growth that is eventually going to happen. The infrastructure for us is key. We talk about people saying token and all of the sort of noise that happens when you're trying to create change. There's a lot of that. We get a lot of comments about, well, the women just want to make $1 million salaries. And it's, that's not what it's about. The women want to have the infrastructure so that they can have the ability to perform on a level that allows them to succeed. Salary, that's not even the priority at this point. It's really about allowing the athletes to succeed and providing what any professional athlete should receive as being one of the best in the world at what they do. So, I think that's the first piece, is really that investment in the infrastructure. The allyship, as you mentioned, is key. And then see where it can grow. We believe that there's a huge opportunity and potential. Women's sport is completely untapped still at the moment. I mean, we see incredible results when it comes to viewership. Female fans are undertapped. So there's a huge opportunity. And I think the next generation fans are very different than what we've seen in the past.
That's all of you guys listening. You're the next generation of fans. So make sure that these folks know what you want to see, because they're working to represent you. I'm going to ask this question to all of you guys. It's a two-part question. What has been most rewarding about your role? And what do you want girls in the audience to know about the future of women in sports? Amy.
All right. So most rewarding about my role, when I first came into basketball, I have to admit, I joined it because I did love basketball. Like, I love basketball. I'm going to work for the NBA. I met my husband playing basketball. Basketball was kind of my life. What I didn't realize, the most rewarding part, is how much we impact people's lives off the court. Whether it just is the stuff we've been talking about, what sports teaches people, which we all know. There's a reason why, I think it's 90% of top female executives played a sport growing up, and over half of them played a collegiate sport of. There's a reason, because it's sport teaches you something. But more than that, the most rewarding is absolutely the impact that our platform has in terms of transforming communities globally. You see all the social justice and social impact work we all do in the community. And it is true. You can use basketball to build bridges globally. And it's very, very powerful. To your second question around just girls in the audience, this is just a passion point for me. I think, the word confidence comes into it, and we just have to do all that we can to help ourselves feel more confident. I'll give you an example. So growing up, my coach, my high school coach, and I knew her from 8th grade on, before games would write inspirational quotes and stick it in our bag, or surprise us. And it's so nice to know that someone cares. And those quote, I'm a big cheesy quote person. I'll give you one. This is my favorite one. The world belongs to the energetic, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think that's I think energy is something, just keep on going. But anything you can do to really build that confidence. I wish I had little confidence dust to sprinkle on my kids. There's no such thing. No one's invented that during COVID, but short of that, how can you build that foundation for confidence is really important.
I love that. That's a great answer. Caroline, what has been most rewarding about your current role, and what do you want girls in the audience to know about the future of women in sports?
Most rewarding is, again, the impact we can have on fans and through all of the work we do. For me, I get to put sports on TV. I get to help innovate that business, and hopefully in the near future, no matter what device you have, you'll be able to watch a game anywhere you are in the world, and that's incredibly rewarding because you can't always get to a building like now. In terms of what I'm excited about, I agree with Amy. The confidence piece that's something that I'm really excited about, that you're no longer, the next generation is going to see all these women in the business already, and they're not going to feel like they stand out. But also, what I want them to know is, like, have confidence in who you are, and don't try and be something you're not. People actually know me because I remember people's birthdays, and I sometimes will send a cake. I don't send like a cookie. I will send a whole cake, and it will just show up. And people are like, you're crazy. And I go, this is just what I do. So, and people might see that and say, gosh, you're an executive, you really shouldn't be doing that. And no, I'm going to do it. And it took me a long time to feel okay, doing things like that. But every person that knows me is like, oh, it's my birthday, where's my cake? So it works. Again, having confidence in who you are, and knowing that standing out and being different is good. You don't have to be like everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Jana. You show up, or I'm sorry, Caroline, you show up as your whole self, and everybody else has to deal with it. And first of all, cakes and birthdays are excellent. Like, who would be a hater over such a thing?
I'll send you one for your birthday.
I'll text you my birthday. Jana, I'm gonna stick to the first question for you, but I want to know if it has changed with the two roles. What was the most rewarding thing about your career as a professional hockey player, the gold medals, all that good stuff, and now that you're on the leadership side?
Honestly, I think they're very similar. My playing career and now post-playing career have all been, I think the most rewarding part is about being part of changing the way people perceive women in hockey, providing opportunities for young girls. As I mentioned, when I grew up, it was, one of very few girls who played the game. And now you go into an arena on a weekend and you see girls running around everywhere. So that's rewarding. For those who aren't very familiar with the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, we represent the top players in the world. So we have 125 of the best players in the world. And after a number of failed leagues, they've actually come together as a unified group and created a unified voice for the creation of a sustainable and viable professional league. So it's been incredibly rewarding to be part of this movement that is for the future. It's about the next generation. Many of our athletes know they may never be a part of the benefit of what they're doing, but they boldly and courageously put their own careers on the side and said, the time is now to create something better, to leave our sport better. And that's been really, really rewarding to be a part of.
It sounds like it, Jana, and you kind of light up talking about it. So congratulations on being a part of all of that. All right, guys, I want to go into some real life application, because I truly believe that we are so much more powerful when we share our stories with one another. And both Amy and Caroline, and you can see it in Jana, you have all shown confidence and talked about confidence. But I think, at least my experience, confidence is something that we can work to develop. It's not always, a natural thing, although I'm probably pretty blessed in that category. But I do think that it's something that we can work to develop. So do you guys have either a story or a tip that you would like to share with our audience in terms of developing confidence? Because I think sometimes I know that I have been probably more empowered after the no's and the hiccups, because I could look and see what I did wrong and I could actively improve it moving forward. That would give me more confidence to be better prepared the next time. I don't know if that's you guys' story, but is there a story that you want to share that helped boost your confidence, or a tip that you want to give the ladies? Amy.
All right, I'll go two quick tips. The first, just from experience, is just I think repetition in everything builds confidence, and that could be, me shooting free throws growing up and being more confident in my free throw shooting. I should have been practicing defense. I wasn't. That was clearly an issue, but maybe I wasn't as confident. But I think repetition on everything, and I manage a lot of women. We present a lot in my group to big groups. Repetition of presenting. It's natural to be nervous presenting to a lot of people, but repetition helps. The second one, there's a book called The Confidence Code, and they have an adult version of this book, and they have a teen version. My daughter's 11. I have to admit, like she's not quite at the level to read it yet, but I do think just reading about the differences between men and women and how you can think about pursuing a more confident lifestyle. Like I said, there's no confidence dust on the shelf. You got to earn it and you got to feel it. But it's one of the most important things, certainly in my career. And you don't always feel confident, but you have to try to keep the torch going, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
There's science to that. Caroline, a story or a tip on confidence?
Oh, you have to lean into the scary. I think that's like whatever scares you, you have to lean into it, and you really, because most things that are scary aren't actually that scary. And as Amy said, it's about repetition. But and again, I'm not a super extroverted person, and Amy will laugh. My first NBA Tech Summit was incredibly overwhelming. Because it's 95% men who all know each other. And so it took a lot for me to really, sit down next to somebody and introduce myself.
You didn't
somebody I don't know at all. What?
You didn't show up with a birthday cake to break the ice?
I should have. It would have worked. But yeah, I think that, I've overcome that in a number of ways. Obviously, I have a lot of clients in the room and whatnot, but yeah, you have to lean into the scary at whatever age you are, because it's probably going to turn out okay. And even if it doesn't turn out okay, it's, the embarrassment in your head is much worse than what actually happened most of the time.
Yep.
So you will recover.
And you will learn. It's not forever. You will certainly learn. Those are both great tips. Jana, what you got? A story or tips on confidence?
Yeah, I mean, those are tough to follow. Some great advice. I think for me, confidence was always about preparation. So similar to repetition, but as an athlete, if I felt like I had done everything I needed to do to perform, then you can go out and just play. And it actually becomes fun because you're just there to do it. And you've done all the work to get there. So I think the preparation is really key. And then the other thing I think about with self-confidence, especially as a mom with young daughters, my daughters are quite young, but I try to expose them to a lot of different things because they're going to find some things they're good at and some things they're not good at. But eventually I think it'll transform and they'll bring things together from different areas. And, self-confidence is one of those things that, I want to teach them that nobody will give to them. They have to find it themselves. But I think being able to expose them to a lot of different areas of life, they'll find things that they gravitate towards, and those things will give them their confidence.
I love that. Exposure, trying new things. Lauren, who is one of the brains behind running this fantastic conversation, I'm going to open up to questions in the chat, unless Lauren tells me that we can't do that, because I would love for this to be interactive for our listeners. So if you guys have questions, please send them in the chat and I will get to them as best I can as we are winding down. You ladies have been tremendous so far. We do have one more question that's on the script here. What was one of the biggest challenges for you as you navigated your career, Amy?
Gosh, for me, I think it's, I wanted to live in Northern California, to be honest. That was a huge barrier for me. Like, I did not want to leave. I grew up in Sacramento. I lived in the Bay Area. I wanted a job there. And that, like, me picking up and moving to New York was felt like a very big, I know it doesn't seem like a lot to some people. It was like a massive decision for me at that time, just to change careers and move across the country. That was a big one at the time.
So as you made the decision, was it just leaning into the scary, like Caroline said?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's like you really want to take a chance. You have to take some risks, right? And not knowing what you're getting into sometimes is scary, but you've got to try it a lot of times.
Love that.
Just like Jana said with sports, like trying a bunch of new things, especially for kids, it is really important. Jana, I live in Connecticut and tried to get my kids skating. They tried.
Not for everyone.
They tried though. That's the point, right? They tried.
Yeah.
Caroline, a biggest challenge that you've had to overcome to this point?
Not feeling like I fit into a room. I've worked in very demanding industries that are all male dominated, just like sports. And when you're young and you walk into that room, it's very intimidating. And so over time, it gets easier and you get smarter and you get more confident. But yeah, walking into that first room and being scared to even say a word, it was a big challenge to overcome. And you want to like blend into the wall a lot of times. And, I credit the people that were in that room who really invited me. I once had a chairman of the board at a board of directors meeting for a big public company say, I've been sitting in the corner pretending to be invisible, and he actually sat me down right across from him in the middle of the table, which was, a huge olive branch. But, I think that's a huge challenge and, one that I've overcome over time.
Wow. That's an active ally, whoever that person was. I love that, Caroline. Jana, biggest challenge? On either side though, Jana, because you had a whole life as a pro and then now this side.
Well, mine was probably transitioning from one to the other. And it's sort of a big gray area when you're an athlete and then you're a retired athlete. And then, now I'm in a leadership position working with players who were my teammates, not so long ago. So I think balancing that out and learning how to manage those relationships, because as we all know, you get into leadership positions and sometimes you have the difficult decisions to make and the hard news to give. And sometimes you get to give the good news, but, figuring out what those relationships look like and transitioning out of sport into, administrative leadership positions, I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
I love that. You guys have been so great. We've got the questions are popping. I just love it. I love it. Someone said, this is epic. Thank you for your genuine words and authentic personalities. I'm going to get to your question, Mary Beth, as we wrap this thing up. I'm going to hold that one though. But we did get this question from Julia. As a college student looking towards pursuing a career in sports in the future, what do you recommend to do in order to create relationships or find mentors that are willing to guide you through the process? Amy, I'll start with you.
All right, Julia, roll up your sleeves, first of all, because it takes work and effort. You're interested in a career in sports. There are so many people, as I mentioned earlier, who says, I love to do sports marketing. Why do you like it? I'm a big fan of the Knicks. I'm a big fan of the Rangers. I'm a big fan of whatever. You have to meet people and understand their jobs. And you start with the schools that you went to, the networks that you're in, finding alumni to talk to you, and not just sending a note that says like, hey, can we grab coffee? Or, hey, do you have time to chat? Like a thoughtful, every outreach you make it thoughtful, explain why it matters to you. Just recognize that people in the sports industry get a lot of outreach and we all want to help. We really do. But it really getting those point-to-point connections is, I think, a great starting point. And then there's great publications. Listen, when I was trying to get into sports, I was like, what is this sports business? What is ticketing? What is sponsorship? Like everything's online now, which is awesome. Sports Business Journal, you can subscribe through your class. There's all sorts of different news media publications. So you can really get smart quickly on the industry. And I think that matters a lot when you're trying to break in, because you're going to be able to know what you like.
I love that. I love that, Amy. Julia, when you send those emails, have some substance to them. And if you get someone that is generous with their time, do not waste it, because these people are very, very busy. Caroline, we've got a question for you, and I hope that I understand this question correctly. Randy says, I have noticed a major difference between professional athletes and general entertainers in that athletes who succeed have conquered their confidence. Actors seem to lack that. So I wondered if Caroline has also found that, or how does that company deal with this? I'm assuming this is as you're making the best deals possible for CAA.
Not sure I understand the question, but our athletes are incredible at CAA. And one of the things that we love is that we get to bring them into businesses that aren't related to the sport they're in. So you see that athletes are creating lots of content, and they have production companies, they're putting shows on Netflix or on Amazon. And so that's one of our best things that we do, but also one of the most rewarding is to be able to have an athlete say, I want to tell these stories, and be able to actually make deals that help them tell those stories. So we're very fortunate. And those athletes have a lot of confidence. And I think social media has changed how athletes get to interact with their fans, which is great because they can tell those stories directly, which is such a wonderful piece of technology and evolution that we've had over the last 15 years.
Yeah, and the access is incredible. That's such a great point. Jane, I'm gonna spin this one to you. Bridget asks, as a fan, how best can we support women empowerment initiatives? I love seeing the PWHPA game at MSG on TV. What can I do to support the demand for more?
We get asked this a lot, actually. There's corporations that can sponsor, but for a general fan, how do they support? So I think there's a lot of ways. There's follow athletes. There's look at the swag. We talked about the WNBA hoodie. We've had a lot of success with our merchandise as well. People want to represent. So there's that. There's, if we get back to a place where we have games, buy a ticket, come to a game. Show your support on social media for that. You want to see the games on television. You want to be able to see these women be visible, but you can find them everywhere. We have women that have great brands right now. And I think just support them, show them you want to see more of women's hockey. And that's a real key.
And I will chime in real quick on that. When we get back, come to games. A lot of people say they want to support. Oh, I'm supportive. Take the time, bring your family, bring your friends to a game. And so much emanates out of that. And if thank you to Chase today for sponsoring this. It's like companies who believe in this, like put their money behind women's sports as well and women's initiatives. And it's really, really important.
I actually think that answer kind of ties into the question that Heidi had of us. She wanted us to discuss the age-old conversation that we hear around women's sports teams, that they won't get the funding and the sponsorship if the men the same as the men teams, because they don't get the kind of attention. And Heidi points out is the chicken and the egg thing, and she finds it to be particularly frustrating. But what both Jana and Amy just said, our part in that is that we show up and support, that we buy the merch, that we buy the tickets, that we get on social and are hashtagging and tweeting about the game. So little by little, I think the future is very promising. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, I actually like this question. Do you have any other passions besides sports? Eric asks. And did you guys have internships? Which I think are a good question. And okay, so let me preface the passions besides sports. I'm sure that you all are very passionate women, but I do think that we also are having this conversation in addition to authenticity, allies, this idea of balance. And I know personally, I subscribe to, it's just like when I was playing ball. During my season, there's not a ton of balance. In the off season, there's time to explore some other things. So how do you guys kind of approach balance in some of your other passions as you navigate these high-powered careers? Amy.
This is like one of my hardest questions always. Being a mom is the main focus when I have free time, of course. And my latest, and this is even more, I feel like I focus on this even more. Planning experiences for my family is like my side passion. And like, I don't hire a travel agent. I've planned probably 5 vacations that I haven't been able to take during this COVID time, but just the thought of planning, I got all these plans for travel, but I love to spend time. We are outdoorsy, we do like sports, but I just think spending time as a family experiencing the world is just an amazing, amazing thing. So that's probably my side passion. I will take those trips someday. I know it's coming soon.
Take those pictures and make sure you hashtag and share, Amy. Caroline, other passions and balance.
Balance, I always try to create time for myself. I think when you take care of yourself, whether it's energizing your brain in some other way, I think it does end up showing up in your work and any other part of your life. But that, like Amy, travel for me. I love going and experiencing new cultures. I'm big on the food, let's be honest. Big on the food. Most people come to me when they're like, what restaurant should I eat at? Or what bakery should I get a cake from? And I'll give them a list of 10 with pros and cons. So for me, it's about food and travel and new cultures. And you know, I'm lucky that, and I think the pandemic has proved we can work from almost anywhere. So so long as we can travel safely in the future, I think that, you know, we'll be able to continue to have some balance there.
I love that. Jana, balance and passions.
I think for balance, it's something you learn as an athlete growing up, because you're always balancing your schoolwork, your sport, your social time. And so I think that's a thing that as an athlete, you sort of inherently learn growing up. Now for me, it's, I have 3 kids and, balancing that is always challenging. So it's almost compartmentalizing. Like when I'm working. And when I'm not, I really have to try to focus on pulling myself back to spend that time. As in terms of passion, I love cooking. So that's one thing I enjoy doing. And that's something I can do with my kids. So that's fun. I enjoy travel as well, which obviously hasn't happened. But I really try to just, wherever I'm at, try to be present. And I think that's the key thing. And to Caroline's point as well, take your own time. I've taken up running during the pandemic, which I never loved running, but for me, that's now my time, my 20 minutes a day where it's just me and my thoughts. And it's so refreshing for the rest of the day. And then when I have my kids, I'm with my kids and I try to be there and be present. And then, work happens and the same thing.
Yeah.
Monica, can I share one tip? Sorry to interrupt on that same, that just came to me. This is a borrowed tip. So I'm going to give credit to the person who gave it to me. Cint Marshall, who is the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm going to have people Google her. She is incredible. But she gave me this tip and she actually sent me a box in my office, which I haven't been to in a long time. I have a box of rubber balls and I have 2 crystal balls. And her whole thing in terms of balance is everyone's juggling in their lives, all these balls. You have to know which are your glass balls and which are your rubber balls. Which are the ones, if you drop them, they just bounce away and it's fine. You pick them up when you get to it. But which are the ones, if you drop it, like it's shattered forever. And I think that is like such a good analogy for all of us, like whether you're a mom, whether you're a student, whatever it is, like know which is which. And it's okay if you drop the rubber ball, like life will go on. Too many of us are all stressed about not dropping any ball ever. And like Cint told me that one time, and I always give her credit and tell it to others because it really rings true.
That is so powerful. And I certainly am of the mindset, well, I'm put all these balls over here for right now. I'm not juggling nothing because I need some me time. But that is a great analogy, Amy. I am now also borrowing and crediting Cint when I use that one.
There you go.
Okay. We are winding down. This has been incredible. I do want to go back to that question that Mary Beth had posed. She was so thrilled with the panel, as I have been. Her question was, what's next for each of you? And we'll reverse order this time because Amy was just talking. I'll let Amy get some thoughts together. Jana, what's next for you?
Well, we've sort of, we're coming out of COVID right now. So we've just had our first 2 events, of course, in New York and Chicago. So we're hoping to have a few more that we'll be able to announce soon. We have a Women's World Hockey Championship coming up, leading into the 2022 Olympics very soon for our women. And our goal would be to have a truly professional women's hockey league coming out of those Olympic Games. So lots of work to do, lots of things to figure out, lots of conversations to have. But we're hopeful that we're creating real change and that we'll be able to support these athletes in a really big way very soon.
I love that. I'm excited to see what the future of the league is. Caroline, what's next?
For us, it's continuing to get fans back in buildings. I think that's incredibly important to helping the business move forward, but also on the media side, it's continuing to make sure that games are following where consumers are. So making sure that you'll be able to watch a game on your phone, you'll be able to buy a game rather than having a cable package if that's not something you want. And continuing to make sure that consumers can watch and engage and eventually maybe bet, depending on the state you're in, on a game, or not bet for money, but actually like engage in free games to help, continue to encourage your engagement of a game. But I'm just excited to have people back in buildings. So I'm excited to go back. I'm a Rangers season ticket holder, so I haven't been to the building in a long time.
I feel like when Caroline shows up back in the building for the first time, she's gonna have a cake because this is just a new birthday for everybody.
It is.
Amy, what's next for you?
Listen, I'll go a little different. I spend many of my waking hours thinking about filling our buildings with fans again. So that certainly is my job, as well as is figuring out the future of media and how our games will be consumed in this world where my kids have 1 million different opportunities and choices of what to do with their time. And I feel like when I was growing up, this makes me sound old, but it's like there were 4 channels. Like you either watched one of the 4 channels or you read a book or you played Monopoly. Or played out in the street. Like we didn't have a lot. So, but I'll go another way, because what is next is, it's International Women's Day today. March is Women's Month, but I love that we are talking about this 12 months a year now. I really feel like we have so much momentum, and it's not just for women, it's for people of color. It's for all of these different areas to drive towards equality and social impact. And we're not stopping because it's March. And I feel like all of us have so much momentum on this front just to make a world a better place through sports and the platform we have. So I'm excited about that.
I love it. Well, the 3 of you have been tremendous. I do also want to say I'm not underdressed. I wore this shirt on purpose because it's International Women's Day, and let's go Serena, always and forever. Thank you so much for your candor. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your time. I mean, I love this. I feel so inspired and encouraged. I know that our audience does as well. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. On behalf of the New York Rangers, the New York Knicks, and Chase, we want to thank you again for celebrating International Women's Day with us. I'm Monica McNutt. That was Amy Brooks, Jana Hefford, and Caroline Rebello, all dynamic bosses in their field. Everybody, take the words and go and be great. Have a wonderful night.